America is more diverse. And two, more people continue to shift toward U.S. cities and suburbs. Now, at first glance, that may sound like good news for Democrats. Rural areas have historically supported Republicans, and they're losing residents. The share of non-Hispanic whites is now under 58%. Compare that with over 63% in 2010. Meantime, former President Trump, while leading the Republican Party, really built his platform on pillars of, as you know, populism, nativism, cultural grievances, reactionary pushback to the changing demographics in this country. And that may play great with the Republican base, but what does it say for the future of the GOP? Joining me now to discuss is Amanda Carpenter, political columnist for The Bulwark. Amanda, always good to see you this morning. Should the GOP be shifting its strategy away from white rural voters, given what we're seeing in terms of a changing demographic?
I mean, of course, that is an important part of the Republican Party's base. And you shouldn't get too caught up in the demographics as a top line. But of course, they have to find a way to grow the party in order to win in the future. Catering to this rural, white, male, elderly base has resulted in the loss of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And even after losing straight elections through, the Republican Party has not found a way to reimagine itself going forward. Typically, a party would conduct some kind of autopsy after losing the White House. That didn't happen this time. The Republican Party has not changed at all. The conclusion that was made was that as Donald Trump has told people, he didn't lose the election. It was rigged, right? It was stolen. And so there's no introspection. It's just doubling down on a losing and now quite dangerous strategy that led to an insurrection.
You know, to your point, in terms of the strategy of the party doubling down, Donald Trump clearly still the focus and the leader of that party. As they're wrapping up the RNC summer meeting, I mean, I know you noted just days after the insurrection in the winter meeting, it was still very clearly all in for President Trump. Not much has changed in the last 7 months in terms of where we're at now. So what is that then strategy moving forward into 2022?
You know what? I'm worried. I mean, the Republican National Committee as an apparatus says as a sort of policy matter that Donald Trump is still leader of the Republican Party. That will guide what they do in 2022. But Erica, I'm worried about 2024. I think a lack of imagination as to what party loyalists would be willing to do with Trump created huge blind spots for the 2020 election. I look back as a Republican voter at the 2020 primary season, there wasn't one. Erica, they canceled primaries. There were a lot of Republican voters in important states, South Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, that had no voice. What makes anyone think if the Republican Party is successful in 2022, there's going to be a Republican Party in 2024. The whole rationale behind it was that we need to make it easier for Trump to get the nomination. I don't know how that would change the way things are going right now under the leadership of Ronna McDaniel and others whose entire being fundraising and everything else.
You know, Amanda, one of the things you talk about Ronna McDaniel, one of the things that she said to Fox News earlier this week is, speaking of 2022 and 2024, she said, quote, "I don't think 2024 happens for Republicans if we don't win in 2022," adding, "If they federalize elections, it's going to be really hard for Republicans to win nationally. So we have to win 2022." Bottom line for her there, Republicans, in her estimation, can't win or would have a really difficult time if there are federal standards for elections. This really underscores what we're seeing in a number of states to restrict voting access.
Yeah, and this isn't only a federal matter. Like I said earlier, the conclusion from the 2020 election wasn't that Donald Trump lost. It was that it was stolen. And so hundreds of bills being passed in state legislatures in order for to reduce not only the right to vote, but to make it easier for partisan members to take over elections, whether that's giving state legislatures more power. But there's a lot of action on the state level to make it easier to overturn votes. I don't think there can be enough emphasis on this. And so, yes, when they talk about election integrity, they're talking about taking more control over state and local and federal elections. I mean, we get caught up in the culture wars because that has a lot of energy and attention on the Republican side and within the media that supports Trump. But as a policy matter, the smart activists, lawyers, and partisans are completely focused on how to tip those election scales in their favor for 2022.
Amanda Carpenter, always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
This morning, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's two-track strategy to pass President Biden's agenda could be in jeopardy. 9 moderate